Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our very first Ask Alumni series presentation for this semester. My name is Jeffrey Fouts. I'm the Associate Director of Career Services here at the iSchool. And tonight we are going to have an amazing discussion talking about becoming a data whatever. Is it analyst? Is it engineer? Is it scientist? Quentin's going to help you figure that out. I'm very excited and pleased to introduce Quentin Lehn. Quentin Lehn is an alum of the iSchool from Syracuse, a 2020 alum. He's currently a data analyst at Row, which is a unicorn tech startup in the digital health industry. In his nearly 5 years since graduating the iSchool in 2020, he's worked as a data analyst across a few different industries: digital media with people.com, fitness technology with Mirror, athleisure with Lululemon, and now telehealth with Row. This experience has opened up opportunities outside of his full-time positions, teaching as an analytics instructor for Master School, an analytics boot camp for those who want to transition out of their current career into analytics, as well as an instructor for Correlation One, a startup that provides similar services for companies who want to upscale their analytics teams. So that's a lot, Quentin. I'm hoping that you can shed some light on both of those. Quentin's here to bring what he's learned to tonight's conversation, which is providing insight on breaking into the data analytics space. So I'm going to leave it to Quentin in just a second. I will be monitoring the chat. So if you do have any questions or comments, please feel comfortable to put them into the chat. And I'll make sure that Quentin gets a hold of those. If we're not able to get to everything tonight, I will make sure that Quentin gets everything that we don't get to. And I will send the information to him, and anything he sends back to me, I will share with you as well. All right, Quentin, the show is yours, and we're very excited to hear about what you have to say to us, sir.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Fouts. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. We'll first say congratulations. I always say college is what you make of it. And you're going, whether you're in this call or listening to this recording, going above and beyond to go to events like this, listening to alumni speak, and furthering, your knowledge of what is out there post-grad. So I'm excited to talk about this topic of becoming, anything really in analytics. We'll go briefly through our rough agenda. Half of this will be me talking. It can be interactive. Feel free to ask questions. And then the second half will be just a full AMA for any questions that you have. I'm going to introduce myself here in a second and why you should trust me. When I've been in classes in the past, I've asked myself, like, why should I listen to this information? Why should I trust this source? And so, yeah, I'll give you a little bit of my background. We'll talk about careers out there in the analytics space. We'll then double click into like what I do in my day-to-day. Skills you'd want to know in this career. We'll do a little bit of a SQL demo. We'll go through my list of dashboards I love and hate, charts I love and hate. And then we'll tailor it more towards, I know career fairs coming here soon, resumes, interviews, best practices in that. And then, like I said, we'll open the floor for Ask Me Anything. So feel free to come in with like literally any question you have that's on your mind. Like, my time is yours for this hour. You all invest a lot in your education. And so make the most of it tonight. Feel free to ask whatever you got. And I'll do my best to help answer. Cool. So like I said, I'm Quentin. I'm currently a data analyst at Row. Fouts mentioned the term unicorn's funny. It was a term that was coined back, I think, in 2013 by a venture capitalist named Eileen Lee. And it means it's like startups that reach like $1 billion valuation before they go public. And the reason why it's funny is that, it was coined in 2013. If you follow companies and markets, valuations have increased a lot since 2013. And so the threshold is it's a little lower, or barrier to entry, I think, is a little lower. But nevertheless, it's still an impressive feat. And we'll talk more about Row here in a second. But at a high level, I analyze data to empower organizations to make smarter decisions. I've worked in places that are super data driven and very like innovative and cutting edge in what they do, and they're able to work really fast with high quality, and it's a blast to be a part of. And I've been on the other side of the coin, and you'll see decisions made that are more on like gut instinct, and to not to say they're always wrong, but you generally see a lot of really cool things in those data-driven organizations. So I have about 4.5 years of experience through all those things that Fouts mentioned. I just joined Row here about 4 or 5 months ago. As you mentioned, I was previously at Lululemon for a couple years. So I've worked for like 4 or 5-ish companies. We'll talk about that, why, and then interview-wise, like it's at least 40. I completely guesstimated this, but it's definitely been at least that. So happy to share any best practices, things I learned along the way, and anything around interviewing. Cool. So Row, just to give you like an insight of them, since they are in like more of a startup, is they are a telehealth company that specializes in the ED and weight loss space. You may have heard of Ozempic before, and you might have heard like the pop culture, like celebrities on Ozempic and things of that sort. But the reality is weight loss, I think a little over 40% of America is obese. And so what we're doing in the weight loss space, giving patients access to high quality care faster than they may even get in their with their own doctors and pharmacists, and going through all one platform. And the technology behind that allows patients to get medication in a really seamless way. And so that's why we see patients come to Row, among others. So that's a little bit of an explanation of it. We do a lot of marketing. You'll see us on like college football playoff. We had a few commercials there. The World Series, you had some commercials. If you're ever in New York City, you'll see commercials on like subways or buildings. I'll play one here just to give you an idea of who we are, and a little bit of what I do there. And then we'll stop talking about me here soon, and we'll get into you.
We're Row, a healthcare company helping hundreds of thousands of people lose weight. And we're now offering treatment with GLP-1s, the revolutionary weight loss medication everyone is talking about. With Row, get the online coaching and care you need to lose 15% of your body weight with one weekly shot. Losing 15% of your body weight is possible with Row. Get started at row.co/lose15.
Cool. So that's just a little bit about us and what's going on at Row. What I do at Row, my job, I say, and I'm a data analyst, as Fouts mentioned. We'll talk about titles and all that here in a second. But at a high level, my job boils down to a few categories. I'm either running analyses, so something's going up or down at the company. I'm writing code to analyze data to see why, and come up with recommendations for us to get to a desired target. Maybe some new product we have is blowing up, and we're getting a lot of patients asking about it. And to meet the demand, we want to think of solutions for them to maybe have a better app experience, so they're not coming to us asking as many questions. So that could be like an example of running an analysis. I'll do reporting, right? Building dashboards, tracking how we're doing in a particular area. It could be marketing, could be product launches, could be sales. And dashboards are like the idea of like, if you ever look at like a stock chart, like you're refreshing that thing like daily or hourly, and that's how dashboards should be. And so building out reporting for stakeholders to be able to see and bring viz into that data. I'll do modeling. So how can we organize data in a better way for reporting and analyses? So writing code to make smarter tables, and those smarter tables then get fed into your BI tools, and you have better and more seamless reporting for stakeholders. And then lastly, forecasting, like based on all that above, what we analyze, what we report on, what we're modeling out, like how can we predict how we'll do in the future around these areas. And so those are generally, people ask me what my day-to-day looks like, and it's usually one or all of those things in a given day. Cool. So we'll talk a little bit about my timeline, just to kind of give you all like what post-grad can look like, and like the opportunities that are out there. And I hear about I hear about all sorts of theories about transitioning careers and things like that. So maybe this can shed some light into a bit of that. So in 2020, as Fouts mentioned, I graduated from SU. I interned with a consultant firm called Crow. I met them at the career fair. So shout out career fair. Definitely is a great funnel into internships. They're there for you. So, that I made the most of that opportunity and got my internship there actually in 2019. That turned into the full-time offer going into my senior year. And Fouts helped me negotiate that. So definitely pay attention to that class if you've taken it, if you haven't taken it, and definitely look back at it if you have, because it's a good one. So I was with Crow for about a year in consulting. I did not know what I wanted to do at that point, and pretty early on in my career with Crow as a consultant, it wasn't what I wanted to do. I didn't really even know what the name of what I wanted to do was, and that kind of inspired me for this talk. But I learned that I think it had to do something around insights, coding, and building reports and dashboards. That was like something that I thought was pretty cool. And so I kind of went through that journey of researching and tweaking my resume and starting to apply to jobs to then end up at People Magazine. I got that job in 2021. And that's when I was kind of my first entry into real analytics. A lot of my analytics helped guide like what we should be writing about, what stories would be interesting to write about, what are the top shows we should be like writing about. I had to build a machine learning model that predicted like Inventing Anna should be one of the top shows. You guys remember that in like 2022 or something? And I was like, how the heck did they didn't have like a season 1 or season 2. That was just like a documentary. And so you built some pretty cool stuff with them. It was with People and Entertainment Weekly, all owned by this company called Dotdash Meredith. And so I was with them, and it was a blast. It was my kind of first dream like job in my eyes. And I just got presented with a better opportunity at a startup called Mirror. Mirror was a workout mirror that Lululemon owned. It lets you work out from home, like on a mirror. And it was my first taste of kind of a startup environment. The company was founded, I think, in 2018, it could be 2017, around that time. And so it was very new. And it was cool to see what kind of the latest and greatest tech processes and just kind of culture you get from this that maybe you wouldn't get in a legacy company. So I had a blast here. If you follow digital fitness, it didn't do too well post-COVID. And so I got moved into Lululemon since it was already owned by the Mirror. And I was there for, I guess, looks like almost about a year and on their guest analytics team. So analyzing data to help shed insight into like user behavior, like what do our new users, customers look like? What are they shopping? What are their habits? What are our customers that are coming back? Like, what are their habits? Advanced like user like segmentation, like targeting for like promotions and things of that sort. So again, it was a little bit of a different flavor from all these other ones, but very much was like a data analyst in that sense. I enjoyed my time there. Lulu's an awesome company to work at, but it wasn't that startup energy that I liked at Mirror. And so that was kind of just like taken away from me because the company didn't do too well. So I was very I was a bit more patient and like looking again and waiting for the right opportunity. And that's where Row became that opportunity. Where it was a startup in an industry that is growing a ton, the weight loss GLP-1 space, which is kind of like the class of those like Ozempic. You might have heard of Wegovy or Zepbound. It's really blowing up, and it's a really cool industry to be a part of. And the tech behind it is incredibly fascinating. And so the analytics as a result is very fun. And so been here now for about, I guess, 4 or 5 months. But through all of these, there was negotiating, there was just like figuring out what I want to do and what it looked like. And this may not be the most conventional, but I can at least from tonight, you'll get to hear from someone who has the perspective of what it's like to work in like big, small, and across different industries and like what analytics looks like in all of those. And gotten a lot of growth in these 5 years. I think Crow was, I don't remember the exact number, but definitely well more than doubled salary from Crow to Row, I guess is a nice rhyme to it. And so, negotiating and finding those next opportunities and making those jumps when you feel like it's correct, all important steps to get there. But analytics is definitely a field that's more competitive than ever, but still very well desired and very well compensated. And so if we ever have questions about like that path and what it can look like, yeah, always here to help talk through any of that. So it's a bit of my journey, a bit more about me. But now I really want to get to you all. So I want to like just basically get a sense check, what brought you here tonight? Are you kind of just curious about what analytics looks like, or data scientist, engineer? Do you feel like you're sure that you want to go into this career and you want to like learn more from an alum? Anyone have want to share like what brings them into tonight and wanting to learn more? Because you're taking time out of a day in college on a Tuesday. So yeah, curious to hear if anyone wants to share. Nice. Yeah, I was a dual major. I also didn't share this. I was a dual major in Newhouse and iSchool. So I was constantly in a back and forth of which one I wanted to do. They were very two different majors. So eventually I found something. I think data analyst is a good combination of both. But finance and applied data analytics has definitely got a good mix to it. Going once. Cool. Well, I'll assume unless anyone else wants to share, you have some interest in tonight. I also got thanks, Robbie. Sundaria. Let me know if I'm pronouncing that correct. I got a direct message. Worked on a data scientist team that brought me into masters in data science. Awesome. So yeah, it sounds like at least from the sample size, we got definitely an interest in this career of analytics, and maybe you're sure, maybe you're not so sure, and want to just like see what it could look like. And there's a lot of positions in this space. As Fouts ran down a few, there's all sorts of titles. I think the iSchool has a list of titles that you could have in this space. They all where they overlap and where they're different. We'll talk a bit about that. But you have data analysts, you can be a product analyst, business analyst, scientist, engineer, machine learning engineer, even analytics engineer. There's a specific title called analytics engineer. I think it was coined when I was a sophomore. Netflix was like one of the first companies that began hiring this. So it's like a tailored data engineer for analytics specifically. And there's a ton more in this space. And it's continuing to optimize. And so being a student in your shoes, I would think like how do I know the difference between a data and a business analyst or a scientist, and like what that looks like, and how do I know if it's like a fit for me? I would say like my advice to all of this is there's overlap in pretty much any of these. And so titles sure give you a good sense when you're filtering on LinkedIn or Indeed or Handshake on like what you could be doing, but job descriptions matter way more. And there's a data analyst at Row could be similar to a data scientist at Meta. Meta reached out to me like 2 weeks ago for an interview, and I was reading their description, and I was like, this reads exactly like my data analyst position now. And so just to kind of show you that like titles alone don't tell you the whole story. Read descriptions, and obviously as you interview along, asking the questions to kind of get an idea of what they are. But that said, like traditionally there are differences between the two, and I think it's kind of cool to think maybe through this web lens and be like, this position sounds more data analyst-y to me, even though the title isn't that. And so when I say data analyst-y, I mean something like this kind of chart. There's data visualization. You're going to be giving business insights. You'll be very close to the business and like what decisions one would be making. You'll be building dashboards. You'll be giving presentations. Analysts are doing all of those types of things where they're partners with strategy, with product, with marketing, and they're right there delivering insights on like supporting those initiatives. And so I'd say of these like 4 that I kind of handpicked for this, they're probably the most business facing of the 4. But that doesn't mean every data analyst job you apply for is, but think of it through that lens as you're reading descriptions. Engineers, on the other hand, they're going to be a bit more back end. You're right, your databases, your pipeline. So making sure, like, if I'm subscribing to Netflix, making sure that there's data that feeds into a table that shows that subscription being logged and that information's being captured, and the little gotchas of me password sharing or what have you, like, is able to be captured through this data, so that when they did decide to make the decision to kind of stop password sharing, they definitely had numbers on like the opportunity that would give them. And engineers were obviously a big part of making sure that data flows in correctly, and analysts obviously being maybe ones to deliver that news. Scientists in the blue here, and you can see overlap with all of these, by the way. So analysts could be doing some stuff that scientists are doing as well. Machine learning modeling, experimentations like A/B tests. I had a student from SU reach out like 2 weeks ago about A/B tests, and that's when you're clicking on a website and or you can have a marketing email that has the same emails going to 2 different people, but it's got a different subject line, and they're testing whether the subject line is better or worse than the others and running statistical analyses on like, should it be a little bit more aggressive of a subject line, or should it be like a little bit more like hands-off-ish? Or on a website, like maybe Facebook's trying to have their ads live in a certain spot on the homepage, and Fouts may go on and see it on the right side. I may go on and see it on the bottom left side, and they're analyzing and seeing the difference between the two. Analysts could be doing that, but scientists are definitely in that space. And then machine learning engineers, they're using machine learning to maybe like implement like a solution towards the company. So whether maybe a patient's reaching out to Row and they have a side effect, and we're creating like an LLM to capture that side effect and flag it to a doctor right away. And having that on red alert. Like there's machine learning behind that process, for example. If that were to happen, like that could be something someone would implement. So it's a little bit less like, here's a stat, and it's more like, here's implementing AI like in like the workspace. But as I mentioned, all of these overlap, all of these have their strengths and specialties. And so read the descriptions to like get that idea of, what on those, where on the web do you think it fits?
Hey, Quentin.
Hey.
I wanted to first of all make the comment that I think this is a fantastic slide. Right? I think this really helps visualize the difference between the different roles. So I love the slide, and definitely want you to send me this so that I have this to use. But to go along with what you were saying, there is a question a student asked about job security. And in your opinion, would you say that job security is good in this type of industry?
Great question. I asked this all in every single one of my interviews about like within the specific company, because obviously the answer could be it's depending on what the company thinks. And so getting that sense. I had a boss who was leading the analytics team at SeatGeek, and he was my boss at Mirror and part at Lululemon. And I asked him this question with Mirror. I was asking him, I was like, hey, how safe is this, like, would this role be, and like analytics in general? And he told me when in 2020, when if you know SeatGeek, they're an events ticket app. So you're booking like concerts, sporting events, things like that. March 2020, they can't do any, like they can't have events. They couldn't host. And but if you're trying to see what's wrong with your business, analytics is generally the one feeding that to you. And so without that, you can't really see what's wrong, what's going wrong, and how to fix it. And so most of that team was retained, even from the Mirror to Lululemon switch. So the Mirror folded, like we stopped doing digital fitness. And so they laid off about 80% of the Mirror team of like 400 people. And the rest went into Lululemon, that 20%. I think almost the entire data team was moved into Lululemon. I think there was just one that didn't. So to give you like that sense, like it is a pretty secure industry, just from the sense it depends on obviously how the company invests in it. But like if your company's thinking the right way, if things are going wrong, they need numbers to figure out how to get it right, steer the ship back to where they want to steer it to. And so if you don't have analytics behind that, then you're going to be flying blind. So I'd say, in my experience, it's been relatively safe. But again, those are the kind of questions you want to ask companies. like how they invest in data and like how vital it is to their business, because that'll give you the best sense of like how secure you'll feel in it. Great question though. There's a question about securing interviews and what key skills. We're going to get to both of those here super shortly. So well, if you have questions on it though, feel free to throw it at me when we get to it. Did you have prior experience with coding before Syracuse? What advice would you give to somebody who has a sophomore who has no coding knowledge? Good questions. So kind of with my timeline, the interesting part of it was I did have coding experience. Like I took SQL at SU, I took Python at SU. But I was a consultant for a year and a half where I was doing very little of that. And when I needed to transition back into it, I kind of retaught myself a lot. And I'll talk through some links on like, in addition to obviously your studies, of like links that helped me get better with SQL. There's one that like literally gives you interview questions of like the tech companies will, like people will put out in there in like that from tech interviews, and you can use those to write SQL and get better with it. So we could talk through like some ways like of like reteaching yourself or how to like continue to advance your study in these languages. But I would say that take them obviously at SU if you're able to, but also, yeah, definitely if you're interested in this field, like going above and beyond and exploring that craft. And hopefully you enjoy it. Like that will maybe help you answer the question of like, what I like doing this is like, do you like analyzing data and playing with it and like coming up with new ideas? So hope that helps answer your question a bit. Cool. There's some, I'll take this one, and then if you have like general questions, we're gonna have a whole AMA on it. So we'll definitely get to that. But AI impacting your role. Yeah, I mean, we're leveraging it everywhere. We have our Ro's got ChatGPT licenses, so like we have our own like enterprise GPT, and I use it all the time for coding. It's definitely we think of it as like an enhancement tool, and you know, the ones that use it, you know, should excel with it, and definitely it's a good like prompting and stuff like that are good skills to have. They're definitely not really replacing anything we're really doing in the analytics sense, but they're definitely enhancing. We create our own LLMs too, to like the machine learning engineering side of it, to like enhance the patient experience, and so that's been really cool to see in the last year. So very much an enhancer in like making us more productive in coding. It's probably the best way to answer that. Sweet. All right, I'm going to continue on, but as more questions come, we'll definitely tackle them. So this kind of, someone asked about like, what do you need to know in this space? And it does depend obviously on your role, right? Like based on this chart, data analysts may lean a lot more SQL than Python, but still use it. BI tools are super important. And where like a data scientist, they might lean more on Python and like statistical packages, still using SQL for sure. And so the overlap with all of these is no SQL for sure. SQL is vital to many analytics positions because it's the quickest way to really get business insights. Like it, I guess fast. It is like the core of it. And so there's pros and cons of when to use Python or SQL to analyze data. There's times where Python makes more sense than SQL, but SQL is generally the overlap of many of these positions, and so it's good to know as much as you can in this space. So, like, what do you need to know in SQL? There's the basic understanding and like the advanced side of things. This is not a catch-all of all you need to know in SQL by any means, but just giving you ideas of like what this is and what you could do. You know, your basic SQL could be just pulling from a table. Your basic aggregations where you're just like counting from a table, and you're joining different tables. You know, the magic of SQL is if someone is, you know, if someone's like signing up through or paying for a subscription through Stripe and that has its own table, and I want to know how well they interact on the mirror when I was working like with the mirror, like how they're working out with us on the mirror and when they joined. And if I want to see like, hey, when people joined in December, what was their workout behavior in the first 30 days versus someone that joined us in June? What was their workout behavior? I'm joining two different, like multiple different tables there because that's someone's subscription with someone's like workout activity. And that's the beauty of SQL. Like I can take data that like doesn't even know how to talk to each other yet and find like that same common denominator of that user and like look through their journey and see how they interact with us. And that's really the beauty of SQL. But again, still like a basic knowledge. Advanced SQL is, there's plenty of things you can do. There's like date transformations and all sorts of things, but common table expressions and window functions are things I will like see in SQL interviews and ask folks. And this, for example, gives you like beforehand we were looking at like how often events happening. All right, this is kind of cool to know. Add image is this like mostly used feature of my app. I now know that add image is 44% of the actions that happen on March 16th. Now I might be able to track a bit more for like, hey, what percent, what are mostly like popular features each day, and do they change like over time? Like maybe the add image feature is 44% in 2020, and 2 years later it's 30% because we added more features, or we 60% because we really want people to add images and make that a use of our product. And so we could get more into like the syntax of it, but just showing you like what the power of SQL is. Like it really is more of like, you can generate really quick insights, and like this is 12 lines of code. It's like not very much, and do it relatively fast. And these are the types of data points that get fed into dashboards, get fed into charts, that you will use analyses like for. Another could be like just, this isn't even like that advanced. It's just like a date function. But like, days from user creation from when they added that image. Like this person in their 9th day added an image. Someone else 17 days later like deleted an image. But like you could kind of see like if I was just to follow like my customers and like how they're using my application, I may want to know like in day 1, what are they doing? Day 2, what are they doing? Day 3, et cetera, et cetera. And so that I could use that using like a date transformation to derive that field. So SQL is super vital. There's the basics that you may even be like taught a lot of the fundamentals in school about like primary keys, foreign keys, and like those like fundamentals. But really like the beauty of SQL is like putting together, grabbing insights and like giving those data points for your stakeholders to be able to follow and track along. And SQL code gets fed directly into many BI tools and dashboards. And so it's very much like the core, I think, of absolutely data analysts. And then scientists, I mean, even if I'm going to run a machine learning model, like I'm going to do those similar joins. How I predicted Inventing Anna would be a top TV show was actually like Wikipedia page views like 3 months before it released. That's a completely different data set. I'd have to join in, right, to like my own like people.com's data and be able to make those predictions. And so still needed to know how to write SQL. You can actually write SQL in Python for those that even like Python. And so SQL is very much what I will not shut up about if you like are curious about what you want to know to get into many of these jobs. Cool. So that's my ramble on that. I will say many data analyst positions and scientist positions will have SQL interviews. So excelling with those, I would say, and some have it at like the entry level, like college grad. Almost all of them have it after that. And I would say like my best advice is as I'm like writing the code live, what a lot of the times it'll look like is they could have a Google Doc of data and just say, hey, write code. So you're not even writing in an editor. You can't even run, but write the code. We'll let you know if it's right or wrong, but you got to write it and explain to us, like, is this like what this is? And the best interviews I've had and seen are those where someone is talking through their code. So learning that storytelling aspect, you'll hear it in like interviews. Fouts or whoever will tell you like how to tell stories with your interview answers. It's very similar with coding, like talking through your code and telling the story of like why you decided to go this route is going to help your interviewer understand like what you're writing, and usually you'll see a higher quality. So if you're ever curious about like, how do I do well in SQL interviews? I've never not passed a SQL interview. And I tell you, a huge part of it was the storytelling that I learned in school and just with non-technical interviews. So that storytelling ability that I think we saw in that like slide that we all liked and read here You can see overlaps with all of these. That's a very big part of all these jobs. Cool. All right, that's my like bit of a ramble on SQL. Is RStudio used at all? Yeah, totally. Sorry, I mentioned Python and RStudio for like statistics and other forecasting. Like, I'd say a lot of the time I'll see a company on a job description use like Python/R. Like they kind of go hand in hand. And some companies are big on R, some are big on Python. I generally see Python lean more like in what I've interviewed for. But I will absolutely see like people use R at different spots, and that being like a prereq for some jobs, especially on the scientist side. Without a doubt, like Python or R are both very highly valued. And you'll have interviews like on that for sure. So definitely good to know. Good to know both, like for sure, but like knowing where there are strengths of R and strengths in Python. And I think that's like the best way of navigating like which one you'd want to lean on in what situation. Is pseudocode frowned upon in SQL interviews like the one you mentioned? What do you mean by pseudocode? Also, feel free to interrupt me via like voice if you want. You don't have to chat, but like kind of storytelling where syntax is not perfect. If I understand what you mean, like if you're writing code that maybe isn't good, but the storytelling is good, maybe, or the syntax maybe saying good, it may be like if it's not perfect, like you're articulating. Yeah, I'd say you're scored. Different companies have different ways of scoring. I think the New York Times is one that like actually has an article on like how they grade their SQL interviews. That's pretty decent, and it's different areas. But I'd say storytelling matters. With them, I interviewed with them, and I had they were my first ever SQL test, like 2021, and they definitely weighted weighted storytelling nearly as much as the code itself. So they're very important and definitely go hand in hand. Yeah, other than technical skills, what are the most? Yeah, I mean, I think kind of what I've been saying, storytelling and like business understanding, but not even like I didn't know a ton about telehealth, but I knew like the questions one would maybe ask to be able to better understand it. In data analytics, you're going to be very close to the business. So like stakeholder relationship, how people think about like kind of consultants and clients, and they talk about that. Analysts have like stakeholders, like internal stakeholders. So like I focus on a lot of like our strategy and operations, like making sure like patients are having a really fast and seamless experience. And I might be partnering with somebody on the strategy team. And so that stakeholder relationship of like, not just being like polite when they ask questions, but also like guiding them towards the right question. Sometimes stakeholders will ask you a question that may or may not be the right one. And so like if someone says, hey, pull this for me, like taking a step back and saying, well, why? What's the decision we're making? Like, why do I need to know that this add image feature is 44%? Like, why are you curious about that? Like, we should track it, but like what decisions are we thinking about and helping them guide like that decision? So stakeholder management is a very big part of how you can be evaluated in your job, like aside from like the technical side, which is why I like the analysts so much, because there is a lot of non-technical skills that come with it like that. Oh, that's awesome. Great. Yeah. So no, good question, Ricky. So that's SQL. I was gonna go through a demo, but we're already at 6:40, so I'm gonna save the SQL demo. But I will link out some links on like different ways to better learn SQL just outside of the classes that you know. But note that like you'll get a lot of classes in SQL and languages are taught like at the most foundational levels. And so going above and beyond to be able to write code like what I'm kind of showing is definitely something I would encourage. It may help you even like really even enjoy the tool even more. And I remember just playing around with sports data and like analyzing that and just having a blast, just letting curiosity kind of take me. And so very much encourage people to go above and beyond outside of just like the class with learning these tools and like going towards like passion projects and things of that sort. So gonna go past this and move on to BI tools. Yeah, I got a question about standing out for internships. We're gonna talk all about that here in a second. But BI tools, so aside from SQL and coding, you may be using any one of these tools. You might have heard of Tableau, you might have heard of Microsoft Power BI. Lots of startups are using Looker, which is Google's BI tool, one of Google's BI tools. Hex is another one. Which ones to know is like questions I'll get asked. And honestly, it's just good to have an understanding of many of these. I would say, unlike being tested for SQL interviews or in Python, you're rarely, unless it's like a Power BI like engineer or something like that, you're rarely tested on like one specific BI tool. Like I don't think I've ever, and I said I've had like 40 plus interviews. I don't think I've ever had like a Tableau test. So knowing that, like again, there probably is one out there, but understanding how dashboard tools work and like what is a good dashboard, what is a good chart, like what are the differences between many of these tools, is like I'd say sufficient. Definitely become an expert in whatever tool you like enjoy the most. And I think it's good to have that skill. So it's not to say like don't go deep into any of these, but don't feel like you need to know all of these. I know, I think maybe 4 or 5 of these. So just wanted to kind of call that out. Someone asked me about salary progression. Not really. Like, is it frowned upon to talk about it? I think I said happy to share more on like a non-recording, but like I think I mentioned, the Crow salary that I got initially was around what you'd see on the iSchool like posting. And through my journey, I've definitely more than doubled that. Like where I'm at today. So just to kind of give you at a high level of like salary progression, in analytics, it definitely can progress pretty far into how far you go. And what I do like about analytics, I'll just speak on like progression, and then I'll get back on topic. In a lot of tech roles, you can have the choice of whether you want to go like a manager route, which is how many people think, like, oh, I'm a manager of people, I'm a senior manager, director, VP, etc. But in a lot of tech companies, you can go like an individual contributor route. So like I could be a senior data analyst next, and then a staff, and then a principal. And like you're getting a huge salary progression that way too. Many tech companies have similar pay bands for both. So like a principal data analyst or a principal data scientist or product manager could make the same as the VP of data or senior director of data. And so you're not managing people in that individual contributor route. You're just growing scope of like your craft and your skill set and maybe the solutions you're offering. So I did want to make that note in like progressions. If you do go on this path and like, I don't really want to manage people, like there's that route too. And both are very well compensated. So I'm getting people direct messaging me. I'm just kind of calling them out, just letting you all know. If you don't want me to call it out, let me know. And we can talk offline. But these are your BI tools. Sorry to get back on track. And so what I like to talk about is, like I said, like rather than the tool itself, like charts I like and charts I don't like, and dashboards I like and dashboards I don't like, because you may get tested on what's a Quentin dashboard look like, and they might want to like just understand how you present information. And so there's a cool, when I was teaching in master school, like boot camp, like we had a cool like hierarchy of like different charts, but generally length is your best bet. This is the exact same chart, like the exact same data, but on the left side, I can see that China is more than double US in CO2 commissions. And I could never say that in this pie chart on the right. So pie charts, you'll find in a lot of analytics professions, like people just stay away from pie charts as they go farther along. If you have a pie chart like 1 or 2 different slices, it's probably not the end of the world. You got 3, 4 more, like stay away from it. Go bar charts. Length is, there's studies that many people smarter than me have done on like visual hierarchy and what grabs people's attention. And length is by far the #1 type of chart that gets people like glued and able to make quick takeaways. You don't want to have charts that are confusing. So bar charts are awesome. Obviously line charts, and there's plenty of other charts that are good, but just know like it's length. Color is obviously another one. So again, I'm kind of highlighting my point here on like China, for example. I don't even know if this data is real, by the way, just an easy example. So don't quote me on any of this. But that just to give you an idea of like, do research on the types of charts that make the most sense for your data, and ask yourself, what is the question, what is the takeaway that I'm trying to deliver? Whenever I'm giving insights, you always want to lean with the takeaway and end with the data. So I might have a slide that says China's CO2 emissions is more than double the next one, the US. And, you know, maybe it's like taking away that point. And then we have the chart. And these are like, this is advice that I see people that are current analysts that, you know, if everyone wants to ask like what makes a great analyst versus a good one, like stuff like that. So knowing what charts to use and how to tell that story when someone was asking about like non-technical skills, these are examples of that. Then there's dashboards. Like there's people that love making dashboards. I love them too. They are great ways for stakeholders to not ask you the same question over and over again, and for them to learn the data along with you. If you have if anyone like has any kind of stock or is interested in a stock, you may look at that stock price every day and learn that, wow, when it's at 250, that's a lot higher than what it was 6 months ago when it was 150. Like you have that quick intuition. It's the same type of thing with dashboards and stakeholders, where if you get them to look at your dashboard every day along with you and they see how it refreshes, they're going to be just as smart as you with the data that's being presented, and you're making them smarter stakeholders. And then that's how you get people to say, wow, I love your dashboard. It's not so much how pretty it is. And we'll talk about that in a second. But I'd say the best kind of dashboards have charts that make you want to go back and make sense to go back to. So there's some detail here, but I'm not even going to double click into that because I know we only have 12 minutes left in this call. But like an example of a dashboard I hate or don't love, it looks pretty, but if I were to refresh this tomorrow, I couldn't tell you what would look different. I have no idea what would look different on this. And your stakeholders would ask them, why would I go back to this tomorrow? Do I care that this 76%'s 77 tomorrow? Maybe. I don't know. Like, where on the other side, I might see that this amount spent spiked like in 2 days. And like, whoa, okay, what's going on there? Or my clicks went way up on this kind of like top right chart. Like, cool, what's going on there? And if I want to know what's going on there, I can go to the bottom and see, like, are my LinkedIn ads driving that? Is it my Facebook ads? Like those, they can react to a chart and find the detail at the bottom. Like that is what makes a great dashboard. So gonna skim over that. But when you're asking yourself, again, non-technical stuff, like these are the types of things. Okay, so resume. So I know there's like, a lot of this is cool, great. It's great like advice for when I'm in the career, but like, how do I get into this career? This is my resume that I use when getting into Row. There's good things about this. There's probably things that Fouts could say, yo, this could be way better. But what I will say about the resume process, it is a journey that you should absolutely go to career services with and continue to refine and iterate. Every single job change I made, I completely overhauled how I was like approaching resumes. And I'd say this has worked. And I'll give you the power of resume story. When I was leaving Crow, for those that weren't here in the beginning, I graduated from SU in 2020, went to a consulting firm in 2020 through 2021, wanted to pivot into analytics. I spent about 6 months in that pivot transition of like wanting to like applying to other jobs while I was working at Crow. And the first 2 months, I was like just getting nothing, submitting kind of same resumes. I heard stories of kids all the time saying like, I've applied to 300 jobs and gotten nothing. Like that was me. I was doing that. And I completely tweaked my resume and focused way more on keywords with like paid for whatever tools. Now you have AI. Now it's like even easier, but like paid for whatever tools that like did some keyword matching of like job descriptions to resumes. And I kid you not, first week of doing that, I had like 10 interviews that week. It was like so resumes absolutely matter. I'd say like the best advice with them is, yeah, tailoring the keywords is a big part of it. Being concise with it, being intentional. Like person reading this should know like, why are they interested in this job? It's measurable to some extent. You don't want to make up numbers that's like, I'm a college kid and I drove revenue by 100%. Like, okay, like great. You might have, if you did, maybe, all right. But like, don't feel the need to like embellish it. It may even like, and those kind of numbers could look like AIE. Like you want to be authentic in the story you're telling. And just note that like entry level jobs, I don't think are expecting you to change their revenue by 50% tomorrow. Like that would be insane. So just like keep that in the back of your head. You want to be authentic and intentional and concise and have keywords that yes, do tie to the position. But yeah, general advice on that. Just going to run through these last quick ones and then I'll open it up for AMAs. We can touch upon the rest of these. Interviews. We talked about SQL interviews. So we can maybe move away from that, but like a lot of my interviews in this space, you'll have SQL rounds, but you'll have plenty of like personality rounds or like more of like strategic thinking rounds. And every question they give you, you want to have like a set of 4 or 5 stories in your back pocket, whether it's with the career fair interaction or an interview that you can tell that really address a lot of the questions. Like time where you were challenged, you can think something about that. Time where you had to work with somebody, think about that. Like there's general themes of questions people ask and general themes that you can have in your journey and your answers that can address all these, but make sure it's not like, I'm really passionate about this and that's why I want to do it. Like you want to have more meat to the bone on like why you are there and have stories that back that up. And have it be authentic. Like there's like, if I was at a career fair today and I like had some experience, but I was just curious and learning more, like express that and ask those questions. Like you want to get the most out of the experience. Like, yes, you want to sell yourself and have solid elevator pitches, but you want it to be authentic. And I think that's why I enjoyed the career fair so much. I both got the Crow internship there, and I actually worked the Crow booth my senior year and talking to students. And the like students that I really enjoyed talking to and flagged them for the next round for interviews were just ones that I could have a really good conversation with and felt like they were genuinely interested in like what the role was and what we had to offer. And it's not because they like, yes, they did research on the company and they have some facts, but like they just asked the kind of questions that showed like they're really interested in this position. And so having that conversation, being able to have that back and forth is invaluable and makes you, everyone can know SQL. Like people can know BI tools, but like what makes you you is your personality, your experiences. Like those are things that I don't have. Like, like it's your journey, it's your experience. That's what makes you you. And like make those stand out and have the what you've learned support that. And so that's like my general advice for interviews. All right. That is all I have. So I will now stop talking. We have about 6 minutes left. I can go over another 5-10 minutes. Feel free if there's more questions coming along. If people are able to. So feel free to ask any questions. And yeah, pause there.
Hey, Quentin, before we get into the question and answer session, I am going to stop recording because you finished the main part of the presentation. So let me just stop that real quick.
Awesome.